have noticed, if you have been following me for any length of time, that more often than not, I have AirPods in my ears, and that is because I listen to podcasts constantly. I am always listening to podcasts. Why? Because I can't stand the chatter in my own head, which that's a story for another day. But what I'm here to tell you is that after listening to hours and hours and hours of podcasts, I have found my top horse podcast. I have sorted the good from the bad, and I am here to tell you about the ones that have made my top list. Over the last few years, I've listened to hundreds of horse podcasts. Seriously, I'm basically an expert at this point. And you know what? A lot of them are meh. But through all that listening, I've found some absolute gems. Podcasts that have changed the way I've thought about training, given me incredible insights, and honestly, made me a better horsewoman. And because I'm all about helping you guys level up your horsemanship too, I'm sharing my top 4 picks with you today. These are the podcasts I keep coming back to, the ones I actually recommend to my friends. So if you're looking for some must-listen horse podcasts, keep watching. Straight from the horse doctor's mouth. If you have any horse health related questions, this is the podcast for you. I love this podcast so much that I've actually made it a goal of mine for 2025 to listen to every episode of this podcast. Dr. Latcher is straight to the point, and she has thoroughly drilled into my head now the importance of having a great relationship with your veterinarian. This podcast features interviews with all sorts of horse health related people. They talk about a wide range of topics from basic care to the latest advances in vet medicine. I really appreciate their focus on evidence-based information, and I will admit I am a little bit paranoid now about all the things that can go wrong with my horse's health, but despite all of that, it has definitely helped me make more informed decisions when it comes to my horse's health. Stacy Westfall's podcast. Stacy is a world-renowned horse trainer known for her bridleless riding. Her podcast is full of great tips and advice for improving your horsemanship. She focuses on communication with your horse and building a strong relationship with them, and that really resonates me, especially as I'm training my 5-year-old gelding Diesel to be the ultimate horse. So Stacy's podcast is called Train Your Own Horse with Stacy Westfall, and I just wanted to read the about portion from Apple Podcasts because I don't really know how to explain Stacy's podcast. Like, yes, there's training stuff, but there's also more like philosophical principle type stuff, goal setting. She loves goal setting. So it says, Stacy Westfall teaches people how to understand, enjoy, and successfully train their own horses. She enters every episode saying that. In her podcast, she shares all of her knowledge in her area of expertise, horses. She offers insights into issues that riders face in their own minds, as well as the way they are viewing the challenges and goals they have with horses. She shares tips on becoming a better rider, as well as a better leader for your horse. There's a bunch more, but that is definitely a good summary of what her podcast is about. I would say it's less, like she does share practical tips, but I do really appreciate her emphasis on like goal setting and also developing a relationship with your horse and kind of like thinking about how horses think. I don't know. I feel like you get in the brain of Stacy Westfall, which I really, really appreciate. Horses in the Morning. I would say this is my tax season horse podcast because it is a daily podcast and they cover all things horse related. They have all kinds of guests, trainers, vets, other horse professionals. They cover it. It's a great way to stay up to date with what's going on in the horse world. Horses in the Morning really covers like everything. So I have their feed open right now and they have like really bad ads. I actually love that segment. They get people to send in like horse ads and stuff like that, and they just talk about them, and it's hilarious. They've like all sorts of topics, hauling horses long distance. They're talking about the fires in LA, They have, I think it's a monthly segment with the National Reining Horse Association, various health topics, as I said. What else we got here? We have one with Mary Kitzmiller on dealing with stall sourness, and all sorts of people they've had on here. So I feel like Horses in the Morning is like the horse podcast, and then there's everything else. Like I said, I love to listen to this during tax season because it's literally like 35 minutes to an hour long, 5 days a week consistently. So it's a ton of content that I can just listen to. It's very easy listening. The hosts are Glenn and Jamie, and they have an awesome dynamic that it's just lighthearted for me to have, background podcast listening to during the stressful time that is tax season for me. My fourth and final podcast is Amelia Newcomb's podcast and also her YouTube channel. Amelia is a great resource for riders of all levels, and I love her down-to-earth approach for training. She covers a lot of topics relevant to my journey with Diesel, groundwork, confidence building, problem solving. Her YouTube channel offers lots of great visuals to accompany the podcast content, which is a huge help when you're trying to learn new techniques. I will say her podcast is actually just the audio from the lives that she does post on her YouTube channel. So there is a bit of cross-posting. There's, the same content in both locations, but I just wanted to mention it because Amelia, I've said this so many times, Amelia's channel on YouTube has been so fundamentally important to me in learning how to do things with my horse that I feel like I could not talk about podcasts without mentioning hers, because even though you don't have the visual with the podcast from hers, just what she talks about in those lives it's awesome information that I think anyone could benefit from. Before I wrap up though, I didn't want to leave you guys just hanging with just 4 podcasts, because I'm sure there's other people out there like me who listen to podcasts constantly, right? So a few honorable mentions, if you will. I have Horse Training in Harmony with Karen Rolfe. Her program is dressage naturally, so she's a bit more natural horsemanship-y, if you're into that sort of thing. Sometimes I like the episodes, sometimes I kind of get grumpy. It's kind of a little too natural horsemanship-y for me, if that makes sense, but it's good information. Best Horse Practices with Jack Ballou. I feel like these episodes are good. The only problem is, on the time that I'm recording this, so they released one a couple days ago. The one before that was October 10th. So they don't have a ton of content, but when they do release episodes, it's good. I love Jack Ballou's content. She's very much into horse fitness, which I could definitely nerd out on. Murdoch Method. So this is a newer one that I've listened to, and it's lives that Wendy Murdoch has posted, I believe, on her YouTube channel. The content on these is very good. Be Your Best Horsemanship with Phil Hagen. Phil is a team roper. His are more, there's no practical, this is how you train a horse type of thing. These are very much philosophical episodes. So the 4 phases of a horse's mental game. At the time I'm recording this, he's getting ready to compete at Road to the Horse, so it's kind of interesting. He gives little updates on that, which is really cool and I enjoy. Dear Horse World. So Noelle Floyd recently started this podcast not that long ago. She's had some really, really cool people on this podcast, particularly some Canadians that don't live far away from here, which is really cool. She had Josh Nickel, she had Nikki Flundra, great Alberta girl. I love it. There was another one. She had Tick Maynard. I loved that one. She also had Jenny Susser. She's like a goal setting, confidence type coach. So new podcast, Dear Horse World. I've been really, really enjoying that one lately. Speaking of Canadian, I listened to the Exhibition podcast. It's from the guys who are putting on the Exhibition Reining show. I will be like, the hosts are kind of annoying, but I do appreciate the people that they have on. They had Steve Ross on, they had Jim Greendyke. Who else was really good? Like, just like the people in the Canadian reining industry, Wayne Latimer. I'm pretty sure they had Shauna Saperja, Clay Webster, Wendy Nelson, Austin Seelhoff. Like, if you are interested in Canadian reining, the Exhibition podcast is definitely for you. And speaking of reining, we have Mr. Fupani. Episodes aren't super consistent either with this one, but we have Along for the Ride with Andrea Fupani, and of course he's able to get in the coolest people ever, right? He had Lisa Lockhart on, which I love that. He had Nick Dowers, Ty Murray, Sarah Dawson, like all-star cast on his podcast. Definitely, you just have to listen to that one. The Humble Hoof, I recently subscribed to. It's all about hoof care. So we had like hoof care in the winter, training for soundness, just, again, nerding out on horse health. Love it. So that's kind of it for my podcast recommendations. I feel like everyone has their own, their own favorites, right? There are more and more horse podcasts out there every day. I would be very curious, because I listen to podcasts so often, I run through content very, very quickly. So I am always appreciating recommendations for new and exciting podcasts, or even just a really, really good episode on a certain podcast. If you have any recommendations, please put them in the comments or message me. I want any and all of them. And until next time, remember, it's always a good day to ride.